Fishy, fishy, fishy!
What is going on, fishy friends? Rich here in a half-dark fish room for a little midweek fish room update. Let's see, I don't have the room lights on over here. Let's see if I can explain. There's an overhead fluorescent light over here, there's some over there. Now for the most part, when most of the tank lights are on in the fish room, most of the room is pretty well illuminated. Over here, however, I do not have a tank light on the red covers or on the juvenile tiger turks down here. Trust me, that's the tank where they would be. It's the tank where they are. I do have a light over here on the blue ram tank and a light over here on my brine shrimp setup, so part of the room gets illuminated, but well, sometimes I just like to leave the lights off while I'm down here kind of walking around, seeing what the fish are doing, feeding some of the fish. There's enough ambient light, it might not show up on the camera, but there's enough ambient light in the room here for these fish to eat if I were to feed them and everything. So let's see, where did we leave off last? Hey, if you like what I'm doing, hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button. Anyway, what we got here is my German blue rams. I had experimented and tried to put a whole lot of German blue rams in a tank together, and I wouldn't say the experiment was a complete failure, but it certainly wasn't a success. I lost quite a few of these rams. I'm down to 4. I think I've got at least one female. I think that right there is a female. And there's at least 2 males. And then the last one is questionable. The last one, I'm leaning towards female, but I'm not 100% sure. It's actually this one right here. I've done a video before on some of the traits that I particularly use to try to sex German blue rams. Lots of people say they can do it. Lots of people say it's impossible. Lots of people pick particular traits that I personally don't think are good indicators as to whether or not the fish is a female. Well, as to whether or not the fish is a male or a female. One of the biggest indicators of a female is a pink belly. A pink belly usually indicates a belly full of eggs, and I find that to be one of the best signs. Lots of people talk about the second dorsal ray of rams, and on males that second and or third dorsal ray is often extended, taller than the rest. It almost looks like spiky hair or a mohawk. That's not a bad one, but I've seen plenty of females that have that trait also, and I've seen plenty of males that don't really have a very long extended second dorsal ray. It might be a tiny bit longer than the rest, but certainly not enough. Then lots of people talk about the black spot on the side of German blue ram and whether or not it has blue speckling through it. People seem to think that when there is blue speckling, it's a male, if I remember correctly, or vice versa. I don't think that's a great trait either, because look at this ram, for example. It doesn't even have that black spot. What I like to use is the anal fin. That last fin before the caudal tail, or the caudal fin, which is the tail. The fin on the underside of the body is called the anal fin there. On males, that anal fin tends to be a little longer than on females. And on the males, the anal fin tends to extend past the joint, so to say, of the body and the caudal fin, or the tail. So like there, right there, you can see that anal fin. It's extending almost into the space where the tail would be, so to say. It's longer and passes that joint of body and tail. You can also see now that he's got his rays up, or the dorsal fin up, those second and third rays are extended. So in this particular case, I think that was a good indication for a male, as opposed to what I think is a female here, where the anal fin is shorter. The anal fin barely makes it to that joint between the body and the tail fin. That, in my experience, has been a much better way of determining male versus female. Now, on this one, if it is truly a female, you can see those dorsal rays, the second and third dorsal rays, are extended a little more than the rest of her dorsal rays, but not quite as much as on this male. So that's why I don't really love using some of those other characteristics. I don't know, everybody else has certain ways. Some people claim they can do it by the shape and the size of the fish. Females do tend to be smaller, and males do tend to be larger. However, unless you're talking about a hobbyist that's been keeping some rams for a while, you're probably not going to see that size difference, especially not in a local fish store. Usually you're talking about young juvenile rams in a local fish store, so their sizes are pretty much all the same, and quite often stores end up importing fish that have been juiced up with hormones. So the coloration is non-natural. These hormones force the fish to color up unnaturally. It can also force males to have a pink belly sometimes. It can also force a pink belly onto females long before they're really of breeding age. I don't know the specific hormones that get injected into these fish. I'm not sure if it's physically injected or if it's dosed into their food or what happens. But those are some of the ways I've learned to try to sex German blue rams. It's a beautiful dwarf cichlid. They are very sensitive to nitrates. They're quite a sensitive fish in general. Finding good stock definitely helps. I believe the average lifespan of a healthy German blue ram is only about 2 years anyway. So under best circumstances, you're lucky to keep them for a couple of years, as opposed to other fish that you might be able to keep for a decade or longer if you treat everybody right. So that's my little spiel on German blue rams. The red covers have been spawning for me here and there. I wouldn't say regularly. They always spawn on the back of the cone, and I can't see it well, and I've still yet to see any wigglers. So I am 99.9% sure that I'm looking at 2 females in this tank. My Epistogramma cockatoides, the juvenile triple reds, they're doing well. They had grown for me. I feel like in the first week or two they grew quite a lot. Since then, the growth seems to have kind of subsided. I'm sure they're still growing. If I pulled them out and measured them every day, I'm sure I'd see the difference. But the 6 that I had put into this tank, well, 7 I think I put in. I think I lost 1 within the first 24 hours. The remaining 6 for about 4, maybe 6 weeks now. I'm not exactly sure when I got these guys. It could be a little longer than that. They've been doing quite well. They're out and about. They're active. It's hard to find all 6. Let's see. There's 2. There's 3 picking at the filthy floor of my bare bottom tank here. A couple of people have recently asked about my bare bottom tanks and why I choose to keep them. It's obviously not for aesthetic reasons. It certainly doesn't look good. But it's convenient. It's easy to keep up with maintenance. It's easy to see how much waste has accumulated on the bottom of the tank. It's easy to do a water change and to gravel vac the entire floor of the tank without missing anything. Whereas, a tank with gravel, uneaten food and waste get hidden in the gravel and the substrate and the waste, and it's very, very difficult to know for sure if you've actually gotten all the trash, so to say, out of the tank. Keeping pristine water conditions is a great way to ensure the health of your fish, and one of the best ways to do that is to do big water changes often. Now, certain species are more tolerant of that than others, but I'm a big proponent of very large water changes quite often. On these Epistogramma tanks, on my discus tanks, pretty much any of my bare bottom tanks, maybe not so much on those rams, but any of my bare bottom tanks that I began using as discus grow out tanks, or over here where I keep these angelfish, my goal is to do at least a 50% water change daily. Now, sometimes life gets in the way and I can't keep up with that schedule, but that's neither here nor there. But on days when I don't get to do a water change, then the following day I might do an 80% water change, since I skipped my 50% water change yesterday. So bare bottom tanks are utilitarian. They might not look so good. They might not look so bad. This tank right now, when it's relatively clean, I gave this a good water change yesterday, and the tank doesn't look bad, but I much prefer a natural planet tank with some real substrate and stuff as well. So for anybody curious about that, that's why I choose to keep certain tanks bare bottom. My breeding discus I certainly keep bare bottom, again, just in an effort to be able to keep the tank pristine. And like this tank where the Epistogramma were breeding, I did not keep bare bottom. This tank is suddenly not looking so great. I'm getting some leggy growth out of the plants. I got some algae buildup on the glass. I think my CO2 diffuser is a little bit clogged up, and I am not getting the proper CO2 injection rate into this tank anymore. So that's something that I'm going to have to take a look at. Had a couple issues down here in the 72 boat front. One of my rainbow fish, two of the turquoise rainbow fish, the only 2 turquoise rainbows I had in here, I've recently lost. One of them started showing some symptoms, some kind of fungus. Looked like he might have had a wound on his body, maybe from getting picked on by somebody, maybe from running into a piece of driftwood. Then it started looking like it was developing some fungus, and I was monitoring it for a day or 2, trying to decide the best course of action, and then unfortunately I lost both of those the next day. It always sucks losing a fish, but part of my long-term plan right now is to potentially strip this tank, start over from scratch in it, and move a lot of my discus into it. I'm not loving the aquascape. I'm not loving the plant growth I got in it. I think one of my biggest problems was leaving a lot of this floating plant matter up here just shaded out too much of the tank. I got 2 lights on top right now. I got a Finax Planet Plus on one of the current USA satellites. The power supply on the current satellite LED fixture crapped out on me a couple of weeks ago, and I have not gotten around to replacing it. I had found much better growth when I was supplementing the single light on this tank with the second lamp. So hopefully I'll have a chance to sort of get this thing back to where I'm appreciating it again. Summertime has just been so busy for me Personally, I haven't had time to focus as much energy on the tanks as I would have liked, but everything for the most part is still doing well. The plants just aren't thriving as good as they should have been, and I'm not focusing as much attention. I'm not dosing fertilizers. I am still running the CO2, but I'm not even running any of the C-Chem fertilizers like the Flourish and the Excel and stuff like that. Apistogramma trifasciata. All 4 of these juvies are doing well. Now these 4 juvies are definitely putting on size compared to those Apistogramma cockatoides. They're not as striking of a fish. I'm not sure if I should expect much coloration on them or anything like that. They're sort of a bland looking apisto in my opinion. But they're starting to show some typical apisto behavior. I'm starting to see a little bit of aggression here and there. It looks like there's a hierarchy forming, so they're coming of age, so to say. So that's a good sign. Well, the cherry shrimp, I don't know. I don't see any dead cherry shrimp, but I certainly don't see much activity from the cherry shrimp. I think a lot of it is just finding them in this tank. The longer I stare and look, the more I see. But they are difficult to find. There's one nice example. Nice bright red. The endlers that I threw into this tank all seem to be doing well. There's one down there. There's 2 more up there, and I had just seen the other one a second ago. He's in there somewhere. But like I said, it's just hard to find the shrimp. I often have better luck finding them from a different perspective, from looking through the top of the water here, than I do from looking through the side. But even right now, I can't really find any. I don't know, a couple of hours ago today, I counted at least 8 or 9 in about 4 or 5 minutes. So theoretically, there's still a good number of shrimp in this tank, and they're all just doing shrimpy things. Sometimes I'll see them hanging out on some of the floating plants, kind of hanging down from the top, which is always cool to see that. I don't know if anybody else notices this, but I feel like shrimp prefer being upside down than right side up. When they're digging through the moss and stuff like that over here, it seems that their head faces the bottom of the tank and their feet are pointing up towards the sky, which is always interesting to me. The other cherries that I had thrown, I threw a couple down here in the tank with the endlers. I don't know if this will come up on camera, but this endler tank, the population is exploding. There's quite a lot of movement in here from various generations of fry that have recently been born. The light gravel makes it very difficult to pick up some of these fish. And the juveniles, just like the females, aren't very striking, as opposed to the male right there, or over there, if my camera will pick up on them. But I'm amazed at the depth of color that these little fish have. They can easily go unnoticed if you don't really stare at them and really try to look hard. My camera just can't focus on these guys. But hopefully that sort of gives you a sense of the level of activity that's been going on in here. Now I started out with 11 fish a couple of weeks back, couple of months back now. Maybe it's been 2 months, 3 months at the most. Got these guys at the same time I got the apistos over there. And I'm very happy with how the endlers are doing. And like I said, I threw a couple of cherry shrimp in here. There is one of them. Is my camera going to pick them up? There are 3 total. These guys are a little easier to spot in this tank against the white gravel. That one's almost clear. There's at least one other one that's a pretty dark red. I don't see it right now. But theoretically, there's still at least 2 of those shrimp in here. I have no reason to believe the 3rd one isn't in here as well. And the few that I threw up here, again, I don't see them right now. There's one right now. Back there on the rock. I think it's too dark, and I'm not going to focus on it. Maybe from around the corner. When I search hard enough, it seems that the shrimp like to hang out where that assassin snail is, underneath that piece of driftwood. I didn't do anything to prepare this tank for shrimp. I just tossed them in here. This was the Tetra tank that's been running for quite a while. So hopefully the shrimp do well in here too. Alright guys, that's it for now. Comment, rate, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.